Okay, so one of the very important features of the Illustrator environment and sort of visual cues that you get as an illustrator while you're working with paths is this idea of the empty point versus the full point. This object that we've just drawn, you see, having selected it with the direct selection tool, you can see that the selected object using the direct selection tool shows all the points in the path, and they are what we would call a filled point or a solid point. Okay, so they're solid red, indicating that they are all selected. So to show you that if you are to do anything with this object at this point, it's going to affect all of the points in the object. Okay, so I'm going to drag this over here, and you see that all the points are stationary in relation to each other. Okay, so I'm going to deselect that, and we're going to go over here and look at what happens when we use the direct selection tool. The direct selection tool I like to think of as, metaphorically speaking, when we look at the selection tool versus direct selection tool. In my mind, I classify it as the selection tool is sort of like the moving company that's the heavy lifters. It does all the big, bulky, rough cut work, right? Whereas your direct selection tool is your little white glove that comes in and adds a little finesse to everything. In this case, the direct selection tool, when we select the path, notice that all of these points on the path are now empty, or they're not solid. This indicates that none of the points are selected. When I go and select a point, whatever action I take using my mouse or my keyboard is going to affect only that point. So for example, I have an alphanumeric keyboard. I'm going to use my right arrow key to just nudge over a little bit. And look at that point just gently nudging in one direction. I'm going to do it to the left and go the other direction. Or, for example, hand off the keyboard, I'm going to take and select on that little nodule, that point, and I can drag it. I can even drag it up here and drag it over there and fiddle with it. Okay, now I'm going to deselect from there. Now also, using the direct selection tool, if I select a portion of the path, using the direct selection tool, while you don't have a visual cue of it, that means that the attention of the application is on that particular path that you've selected. So I can manipulate that path within the compound path that we've created. So let's go ahead and cut that. Let's see, edit, cut. Okay. And what happens is now we have deleted a section of that path. So this idea of solid points versus empty points is going to tell you what's going on. The solid point means that it's selected, and any action that you take is going to affect it. So when you see an object that has all of its points selected, anything you do to that object is going to affect all of the points. Whereas if you see an empty point, that means that it is not selected and nothing will happen to it. So if you are able to use the direct selection tool to go and select one point in an object, notice it's not selected, not selected, not selected, but this one is solid, meaning it's selected. I can now manipulate this point. This is just fundamental to being an illustrator in Adobe Illustrator. Okay?